Hello, I'm Oliver Pickard and welcome to my workshop in beautiful Limousin, France. Now, in today's video, we're going to be doing a bunch of little jobs, a bunch of little gussets and stuff, because we're quickly approaching the big weld, where we'll be welding together most of the main tubes. Up to this point, things have just been tacked in place to make sure they are where they need to be. But we're quickly getting to the stage where we're making tubes like when we made this this engine intrusion chassis strengthening tube there and there, where there is actually a notch under that notch. So we're getting to the point where we're overlapping ourselves, and so we need to start welding some stuff up so that we can progress further, because obviously you can't cover stuff up and then weld because you'll miss bits, and we don't want to have that situation. But before we get to that, I have a bunch of little tiny gussets and stuff that I've been putting off. It's easy to think, oh, it only takes me, half an hour to make a gusset, and that's okay until you've got 40 gussets to make. So we have one really important tube actually in that area to deal with, which I'll show you in a second. But we've also got two gussets to make up here, and some for this back corner here. I'm not sure whether they're going to be tubular or sheet metal or what yet. Tubular on my plan, but I've been looking at the space and I'm not sure. So let's get stuck in, shall we? Take this inner sill out for ease of access. So the first tube that we need to put in is here, and I'll explain more after I've made it. But we need to lift this tunnel out of the way because this tube is going to sit here and it's going to intersect with the top of the tunnel. And once I've made it, you'll see why. I'll be able to explain properly, but it's all to do with the engine. So let's make a tube, shall we? Tape measure. Here we have our freshly notched tube. It's in there like that. Level it up because it makes me happy, and I'll explain to you why it's here. I know it seems like overkill having all these tubes in one area, but there's a really good reason for it. This, of course, is a Honda K20A2 out of a DC5 Integra Type R or an Acura RSX Type S. It's a similar motor, and it's the similar motor to the Honda Civic Type R EP3 as well. But basically it's a big aluminium lump, and it's from the front of a front wheel drive hot hatch. And that's all well and good. But because it used to be in the front of a car and now it's in the back of a car, the engine mounts, so there's one on either side and there's one on the back of the engine. And the reason it's on the back of the engine is where it used to live, in its old home. That's where all the strength was, that's where all the chassis was, it was against the firewall. But now my firewall's here. And I'm still going to run those engine mounts, but I'm going to add one here. And the reason I'm going to do that is that an engine like this moves around quite a lot in the engine bay, and you might not realise that. But they rock a lot, especially under heavy acceleration. And the solution to that is normally to run harder engine mounts. The problem with harder engine mounts is they also transmit all the vibration from the engine directly into your spine. And then all your interior parts start to fall off, and all your knobs and switches don't work, and you get loose wires out of nowhere, and you have electrical problems, and it's a bunch of vibration that causes a bunch of problems, and it's why racing cars are horrible to drive on the street. My solution is, rather than just use 3 firmer engine mounts, to use 4 softer engine mounts. So like I said, we're going to put another one here. The clutch slave cylinder goes here because it has a hydraulically actuated clutch, which is good news for me. But we're going to put another engine mount in this area, which allows for more control over the engine's motion. And I could have put it from down here, but then it would have to come a long way. Whereas if I just lift it up here slightly, it not only helps control the engine, but in an accident it would also help stop the engine coming further into the cabin, which there will be more engine protection, don't you worry. But it's just a really good start to a really stable engine, and under heavy acceleration it will help prevent the engine bucking this way which will increase traction, of course, because the differential is on the other side of this. So when you accelerate hard and the engine bucks backwards, it will actually pivot off this engine mount and push into the ground, increasing traction and decreasing squat. So rather than the car just, you know, the bum of the car just squatting down and going, it'll just and grip and push its way into the ground, which is really what you want. Right, great stuff. So our next gusset has to be here. Now, you wouldn't normally put a gusset here on a regular European roll cage that just travels kind of up and along. But because we used a halo bar, we need one here that goes to the kind of the center of the radius there, so that it makes it super, super strong. This is par for the course with this kind of roll cage, and it's kind of the downside because I want to tuck this gusset up as much as possible, but it also needs to be super strong. So I need something that sits kind of equally on both sides like that. So I need to wrap some tape around a piece of tubing, hold it up behind, and just get a gauge of where it's going to live, and then start filing it out. And I'll do this one by hand because it's anytime it's the outside of a radius, just like we did previously on these upper legs that go to the top of the halo bar. When it's the outside of a radius, it's always a really weird shallow notch, and it's tough to do. So I'd rather do it by hand than machine. The good thing about having a portable notcher, it not only works on the drill, it works in the vise. So what I've done, I marked kind of where the inside of my radius would be, and I just marked it out with a little pen, cut a V in it. You've seen me do this 1,000 times, and I chopped this on an angle with the hacksaw, and now you can kind of see how that's going to live. One of the most difficult things about this car is that everything's so tiny. I know it doesn't look it on camera if the camera pans back, but this car is it's the size of a Honda Beat. It's the size of a Japanese K car. You know, it's about 25% smaller than a Lotus Europa or a Mazda Miata MX-5 Unos Roadster thing. I mean, it's teeny tiny. And so all your gussets and stuff are, you know, hand size, they're tiny, whereas they'd normally be this big. And so clamping it in a vise and stuff like that becomes quite difficult. You know, it was really interesting the response I got from people who knew what these cars were and knew what these cars were capable of with 120 horsepower, to the people who kind of didn't know what a GTM was and has never been in a car this light. But it was a mix of, so what you're going to do is you're going to create the world's fastest crash, or it was like 250 horsepower isn't that much. It was either one or the other. To put it into perspective for people who've never driven a car this light, there's a journalist called Mike Musto who used to present a YouTube show called Big Muscle and another one called House of Muscle. He's a big, beefy New York guy. Lovely dude. He's that much of a muscle car guy. His beard has racing stripes, right? And he has a Dodge Charger Daytona. That's a car that was originally designed to go 200 mile an hour on a NASCAR track. You know, the one from Joe Dirt with the big nose cone and the wing on the back, right? And he's putting a Dodge Hellcat engine in it, 850 something horsepower, right? But that car weighs over 2 tons, or it will do by the time it's got a Hellcat engine in, which makes roughly a power to weight figure of 420 brake horsepower per ton, which is the same as Pandora will be when Pandora is done. So Pandora will be theoretically as fast as, up to a certain speed, because I'll run out of torque eventually, but she is super slippy, and a Dodge Charger Daytona isn't. But up to a certain speed, Pandora will be as fast as an 850 horsepower car. So just to give that a little bit of perspective, to those who are like, Honda engines aren't anything, why do people pay money for 250 brake horsepower? That's why. Another car that shares the power figure, in fact has a lower power figure, is a Lamborghini Murcielago SV. Not just the standard Lamborghini Murcielago, but the quick one, the SV. And I've been in a Murcielago, and they is quick. So, never been in an SV. But yeah, that's how much speed I'm dealing with, and that's how much, especially with sticky tyres, that's how much kind of stress the chassis is going to be put through. So, because obviously, even though it's lighter, with grippy tyres, you get the equivalent stress. So that's why I'm taking so much care to make sure this car is as stiff and as safe as possible. Because it's going to have, obviously, much smaller wheels than something like a Dodge Charger Daytona or anything like that, you know. So it'll accelerate like an absolute bomb, because it will be geared down from the original Honda. This engine originally had 17-inch wheels on it, and it's going to have much smaller wheels, so it should pull in 6th gear. 6th gear, which is usually an overdrive gear, it should still pull, and it has a very tiny frontal area, and obviously not having the engine in the front, the front end is very low. So, not that I'm going to be doing big speeds on a motorway, of course, but yeah, it should be capable of quite some pace. And me joking about it keeping up with modern traffic, I don't think some people got that, but it's quick. Especially for such a short car. Which is why I'm going to have to do some clever suspension stuff, because a Lancia Stratos is famous for being incredibly twitchy and short, and a Renault 5 Turbo 2 is famous for being incredibly twitchy and short. This has as much power as a Renault 5 Turbo 2, but it weighs, what's a Turbo 2, about 900 kilos, and this will be 610, 620. So yeah, a third less, and it's shorter, if not the same length. I'm gonna have to get clever with it, but that's why I love the Challenger, and that's why I wanted this car, because it should, in theory, get as good fuel economy as my 2CV on a motorway, if not better. By the way, I'm not doing down Mike Mustard in any way, shape or form. I really like Mike, he's a really nice guy. I've never met him, I've talked to him a couple of times, and we have people in common that we are friendly with, but I've never met the dude, but he's lovely, and I really like his car. I'm not doing down his Dodge Charger at all. I just love the kind of juxtaposition of teeny tiny shoebox car with little hot hatch engine and giant supercharged 8-litre, behemoth, and I like that. It's even got a cool name. It's called Angrier, because he's got two cars and they're called Angry and Angrier. I like that. But I just like it's two ways of solving the same problem, isn't it? I like that. A lot of firing and a busted knuckle later, and here we have our little Gusset. Told you it would be tiny. Very, very difficult to make a notch onto such a vertical tube and the outside of a bend. It's like the two hardest things that you can possibly make a gusset for, or a notch for. And it just fits in like that. Now, I took extra time to make it extra pretty, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it by hand. There's something really nice about notches made by hand. And that being said, I'm hoping that by the time we get a windscreen seal on, you won't even see it. All we have to do now is make a paper template for our one on that side, and we'll be able to notch that one out in absolutely no time at all, because we'll be able to cut it all out with a hacksaw and get really, really close before we even touch it with a file. So, to the cardboard. Ta-da. Okay, draw around it and cut it out. Right, see this scar here? That one that runs up my finger? I was once cleaning deck planks, right, with a floppy disk like this, and went like that, and I thought, it smells like meat, and I looked at my finger, and I'd taken my fingernail off, and I could see the bone. So, be careful when using a floppy disk. Just because it's not a death wheel, doesn't mean it can't really, really hurt you. And actually, to say that I just stuck it back together with electrical tape, it's healed very, very well. Okay, it was a long time ago now, but I've only got a little tiny white mark, and like I said, you could see the bone nearly all the way down. But yeah, don't do that, and if you do hurt yourself, go to the hospital, seek proper medical attention. Don't just stick yourself back together with electrical tape. I'm dumb, you're better than me, do better. There you go, straight out the floppy disk. This one was by hand, this one was floppy disk, and they're not a million miles away. This, of course, they are mirror images, so this is longer and this is the longer bit. Not bad, that. Right, file it by hand a little bit and just give it a tidy up. And we're sorted. This is why it's worth really taking the time and getting it as good as you can by hand, because it makes the second one so much easier. I'm not going to make an hour-long filing video, although one day I should make a 6-hour-long filing supercut. That's just an unedited stream of me filing up tubes for 6 hours. Because I tell you what, I've spent over 6 hours so far filing tubes. Someone asked me the other day how many man hours I was going to have into Pandora by the time I was done. To which I replied, all of them. I'm not doing this to make money. This is a labour of love. I dare say I'm happy with that. Yep, she's a winner. That'll be 21, we'll call it. Now, because the roll bar, the main roll hoop, is vertical, or very, very near vertical, it makes it very, very difficult to notch with the notcher. So I'm going to have to do it by hand again. tidy that top of there up. Well, jobs are good. It fits, it doesn't touch the door frame, and I'm happy with that. And it's long enough that I'm happy that it's not going to put any, like, it actually does something. And I think if it was teeny tiny, I would be a bit pointless. But that looks spot on to me. I'm not going to make the other one tonight because I'm really tired and it's getting late. And we've done loads of work today. We've got this centre tunnel in. We've got this bar in. That'll be the engine mount bar. And that's all tied into the centre tunnel now, although it needs to be welded in. But like I said, all this is going to be welded together. It's going to be so strong, and then that way it transmits any force from the engine mount through this centre tunnel, through the box section in the floor, and disperses it throughout the car. It's going to be such a strong car, and of course we got these made. These little halo bar gussets. There's no massive need to go crazy with the gussets in this car because it is so tiny. Its tininess makes it strong, and we've still got an upper door bar to go in, and there'll be a gusset that runs to the upper door bar and stuff. But there's no need for a ton of gussets and stuff because this isn't a space frame chassis. It's just a integrated roll cage. It's just a really good integrated roll cage. So if you have any comments or questions, please leave them down below. I always read every single one of them, and if you'd like to support this channel, then please think about subscribing. It's on your way to the comments. Subscribes on one side and likes on the other. So thank you all for watching. Please be awesome to each other. If you'd like to share these videos with your friends, that's absolutely amazing, so thank you for that. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.